All right, welcome to the CardinalSportsReport.com podcast. This is Ben Parker back with my second episode of the podcast. Last week's podcast, I was looking ahead to Stanford's Super Regional Series against Texas. And this week, I am reflecting on the series they had against the Longhorns and how they were able to pull it out 2-1, taking 2 out of 3 games and advancing to the College World Series for the third straight season. The Cardinal are once again in Omaha 3 years in a row. So a lot to talk about here. And they will open up against Wake Forest on Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's the schedule for Saturday. So 11 a.m. California time. They will be playing Wake Forest in their first game of the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska. Fun fact about Omaha, Nebraska: Omaha used to be a co-home of the Sacramento Kings NBA team with Kansas City. It used to be the Kansas City Omaha Kings. Then they just moved to Kansas City, and then they moved to Sacramento later. And Kansas City now pines for an NBA team, as does Omaha. I don't think Omaha's going to get an NBA team. Kansas City might. We'll see. But that's a topic for a different sport, different league. This is college baseball I'm supposed to be talking about. So let's get into it. So Stanford, as I predicted, Stanford won the series against Texas while also dropping one game. I did not foresee a 2-0 sweep here. Um, as is kind of classic Stanford baseball fashion, they seem to always like to make it dramatic and lose a game en route to advancing to their next round. So really no surprise there. But I will say this, though, the way in which it happened was a bit surprising. Starting with game one, Texas won that game 7-5. And Stanford had a 5-2 lead entering the ninth inning, and Texas scored 5 runs in the top of the ninth to steal the game and win 7-5. Stanford was not able to respond in the bottom of the ninth to tie it or force extra innings. So that was a crazy game. And the real story with that one for Stanford, just from the kind of negative side, if you want to call it negative, is it's just the pitching, the bullpen fell apart. So in the Ryan Bruno came in to finish the eighth inning for Stanford, and so he pitched the end of the eighth inning for them, and then he came back in to start the ninth. And the expectation was they're up 5-2. Ryan Bruno's been really solid all year as a closer. They're going to close this game out, and that is not what happened. The bases instead got loaded under Bruno in the ninth inning, and then Matt Scott came in, tried to stop the bleeding. He wasn't able to. Texas scored 5 runs. Ball game. 7-5 Texas wins. So just the way in which Stanford lost that game, there were some people that said, yeah, they've lost before and come back to win, but the way they lost is different and is really going to sting. But to their credit, they found a way to bounce back and win games 2 on Saturday and win game 2 on Sunday and game 3 on Monday after dropping game 1 on Saturday. To their credit, they were able to do that. Game 2 for Stanford to tie up the series against Texas was an 8-3 victory behind just an absolutely phenomenal performance from Quinn Matthews. He pitched the entire game, pitched all 9 innings, threw 156 pitches, which is insane. And it came down to the final out for him. And if he didn't get that next batter out, because a couple guys had gotten on base, if he hadn't gotten that guy out, that he did get out, they were going to bring in, I believe it was Brant Panther, I think they were going to pull in. He was warming up in the bullpen. But Matthews got the kid out, and ball game. He pitched 156 pitches, 9 innings. Just an absolutely phenomenal, gutty performance by Quinn Matthews. Now, the big kind of topic conversation that was on our message boards, and I think just other people just in general on Twitter, social media, was kind of the ethics behind Matthews pitching throwing that many pitches, throwing 156 pitches, whether or not that was risking his career or not, whether that was the right move for Stanford to make, just in terms of looking out for his long-term well-being. The way I see it, having been around Quinn Matthews for a couple seasons, and getting to know him pretty well, he's a real fierce competitor, and he's somebody that really, 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 really wants to do whatever he can to help his team win. And so I think they did the right decision. They made the right decision and letting him pitch as long as he did, just because he really wanted to. And he's a grown man. He's an adult. He can make his own decisions, and he's a senior too. So this is not one thing to keep in mind too. Is it'd be different if he was a freshman, even riding him unfinished pitches, but he's a senior. This is a guy who got drafted last year in the major leagues. Granted, it was later, like I think 17th round, whatever, like late round. So, it was smart for him to come back. But this is a guy who's been drafted, made the you know decision to come back for one more year after getting drafted last year, and has boosted his stock tremendously as a result. Now he's looking like a fourth, fifth, sixth round pick. One of those first 6 rounds he's likely to go in this year. So he's really boosted his stock. But the point is Quinn's an adult. He's made adult decisions before. He's a senior. Um, he seemed perfectly happy with his decision. And from what I've been able to gather, his inner circle, his family, just all those people are fine with the decision as well. So at the end of the day, if he's happy with it, if his family's happy with it, and they won the game, I mean, no harm, no foul as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we'll have to see. Maybe there will be long-term effects, but I don't think there will be. So, it's one of these deals where it's kind of like long distance running where, for some people you might think, oh my gosh, 100 miles is a really intense long run. And it is, but you might think that's an irresponsible thing to do. Well, if you've trained to run 100 miles, that's actually maybe more safe than it is for someone else to run 13 miles, like a half marathon. So it's all relative. I will say this, that Stanford, I think for the most part, is doing a good job of not pushing guys beyond their abilities. I thought Joey Dixon hasn't really gone too far into games this year. That's why he only goes usually 5 innings, is because they know kind of where he's at. So Quinn's the guy that can go deep. He's trained for it and has prepared for this moment. And so if he wants to have that moment, he's worked all his life for it. This is why he came back for a fourth year at Stanford. Let him pitch. So that's my feelings on that. But obviously, people have different thoughts, and for people that see it differently, I completely understand it. I get it. But that's just my take on that. And then game 3 was an absolutely wild game on Monday night. Nick Dugan got the start for Stanford in that one. He pitched 3.2 innings. And then from there, I'm just looking at the list here. It was in Brant Panther for 2. Ryan Bruno pitched 0.0. He actually got yanked rather quickly. Didn't give up any runs, but he gave up a walk and he was done. 3 or 4 pitches. And then Drew Dowd pitched 1.1 innings. Matt Scott pitched 1 inning, and then Joey Dixon came in and closed out the game at the end there. But the real story is how the game ended. So it was really truly a back and forth game. Stanford scored 3 runs in the bottom of the second. Texas responded in the top of the fourth with 3 runs. And then Stanford scored in the bottom of the fourth, 3 more runs. And then Texas responded in the top of the eighth with 3 runs. So it was a 6-6 game entering the ninth inning. And then Joey Dixon was able to keep Texas scoreless in the top of the ninth inning. And then bottom of the ninth inning with 2 outs, man on first and second base. Drew Bowser comes to the plate. Alberto Rios is on second. And Bowser hits the ball high into the sky, high into the outfield. And the ball got lost in the lights. And Texas was not able to see it. And the ball just dropped kind of like middle of the outfield. And Rios came home. So if it wasn't for the lights, if it wasn't for the ball getting lost in the lights, that would have been a routine out for Texas. I mean, would have had extra innings. But because just that time of night, just where the ball was positioned in relation to the lights, nobody saw it. It disappeared. It was as if it completely evaporated into the sky. Nobody saw it. And then when the ball hit the ground, Texas was like, oh my gosh, we've lost this game. Rios comes rounding home, scores the winning run. Drew Bowser freaks out. He's excited. Stanford wins 7-6. And, and at the end of the game, David Esker asked us, the media, he was like, have you guys ever seen the game end like that? Because I haven't. And, I personally haven't seen the game and like that. Probably, the closest analogy I can think to in terms of what that win is kind of like, how that ending is like, it's like winning a tennis match on a lead. It's like having an intense point in tennis match point. You have the advantage. And instead of winning on a powerful overhead or a passing shot or something like cool like that, you win because the ball had just hit the net and it just bounced on the other side of the net. Lucky shot. Like that. And it's one of those moments where in tennis, if you win a point like that, the players kind of apologize, like, kind of thing. But it was a match point. It's like, what do you do? Like, you just won the match, so you apologize for winning the match. So then, if you're Stanford, you take the win and you accept it and you're excited about it. And then, obviously, for Texas, just absolutely brutal way to lose a baseball game, particularly on that stage, right? You worked so hard to get there. Stanford is one of the top teams in the country. This is the number 8 team in the nation, number 8 seed in the tournament. You force them to, a 6-6 game, bottom the ninth, 2 outs, to lose like that on the road. It's going to be a long, long offseason for Texas. I'm just going to say that. That's not to say they can't get back to a super regional next year. They're a very talented, very good team. But as one that covers college baseball, I know what kind of a grind the season is. You play so many games. Let's see. Stanford 44-18 after the win, Texas 42-22. So, I mean, we're talking 60 plus games, including the super regional. I mean, 60 plus games. I mean, it is just an absolute grind. It's not like an MLB schedule, but like it's a grind. You're playing 3 to 4 games a week, and you've been playing since late February. So just all those games, all those series that you've played, just all the work you've put in, plus conference tournament, all of that stuff to put yourself in a position to make the NCAA tournament. And then if you're Texas to, go on the road, upset Miami and win that regional, and to do it the way they did, and then to go to state, I mean, just to lose that. So, I mean, your heart goes out to Texas, and that's just not the way that you want to lose. And I mean, nobody wants to ever lose, but that is particularly painful. So it's going to be a long, long offseason for Texas. And I think how they respond next season is going to say a lot about the kind of ball club they are. It's really going to be a resilient bunch. Um, yeah, I mean, next year will be interesting for them. That's kind of, are they going to make them stronger or it's going to break them? We'll just have to see. Looking ahead to the College World Series against Wake Forest, one of the things that we're going to, of course, going to have to see is who's going to start that game against Wake, whether or not it'll be Quinn or Joey Dixon. Um, if I had to guess, given that he pitched on Sunday and the game is on Saturday, I would expect Quinn Matthews to start Saturday. That's just my guess. I don't know that for sure, but my guess would be that he'll start Saturday. But they probably are not going to plan on him pitching throwing 156 pitches. So I can see a scenario where he starts Saturday against Wake Forest, but they could have a more a little tighter pitch count on him, where it's like, which is what they've done before, which is see if they can maybe get him to pitch 7 innings, and then he goes into the 8th inning, and so long as he doesn't allow anyone to get on base, maybe he pitches into the 8th. But hopefully, I think the strategy / hope for Saturday's game against Wake, if you're Stanford from a pitching standpoint, if you do start Quinn, is if Quinn could go 7 innings, and then if you could have Drew Dowd go 1 inning in the 8th, and then have Ryan Bruno pitch 1 inning in the 9th. I think that's probably the most ideal situation, especially since it's not an elimination game. Although you only lose 2 games and you're out. So, while it's not an elimination game on Saturday, they really do want to win that game, of course. That's kind of my thought for Saturday from a pitching standpoint for Stanford. I would guess they'll start Quinn. I don't know for sure. We'll have to see what they decide, but I would guess they'll start Quinn. But I would think they'll start Quinn with a plan of him going 7 innings and then having the bullpen take it from there. Have Drew Dowd pitch an inning, have Ryan Bruno pitch, close the game. I mean, with the way that Bruno has been pitching, not just the way he blew game 1. I mean, if there's a guy who they might consider putting in there, in place of Bruno. They could put in Nick Dugan, or they could put in Brant Panther. Those are two guys. Panther's a little more comfortable in a more of a relief role. Dugan's more kind of comfortable, more of a Tuesday starter type ish role. Um, or more of a mid reliever type. So I don't know if throwing Dugan into the eighth inning is what you'd want to do for Stanford, but they can maybe roll with Brant Panther, see how that goes. Um, so yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see. There's no guarantee that they absolutely go with a Dowd Bruno. I think the big question is what do they do with Ryan Bruno in this College World Series after the way that he struggled in Game 1 against Texas and the way that he had such a short leash on Monday night. I mean, it's possible that after a week he recuperates, he kind of recalibrates his mind and dials back in, but they might go a different direction. So just kind of how they manage the bullpen in addition to Quinn is going to be really interesting to see. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on the College World Series for Stanford. Obviously, an amazing miracle run to Omaha, third straight year. And we'll just have to see if they can keep it going. I think obviously at this point for this team, this is a team that third year in a row, they got to start making waves in Omaha, right? So your first time you're there as a group, just getting there as an accomplishment, even if you lose the first 2 games, it's fine. You know, getting there is a big deal. Second year in a row, you can even kind of say that. But I think if you're there for a third year in a row, I think you want to see some progress. At least do what the softball team did and get to the semis. I think that's would be real progress for them. So I think whatever the softball team did, they got to look at that as like the goal. I mean, obviously the championship is the goal, of course. That's the ultimate goal, and they should eye that prize. But I think if they could get to the semis, do what the softball team did, hang around in Omaha for at least a little bit, I think that would be a successful, improvement for them. Um, and yeah, and then obviously too for Stanford baseball. I mean, just in general, I mean the atmosphere at Sunken Diamond over the weekend was just excellent. All 3 games were sold out. Um, on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, just absolutely electric atmosphere all 3 nights. So that obviously really helps their recruiting a lot, right? So if you are, Stanford, if you're Thomas Eager, the pitching coach, or David Esker, the head coach, these guys, if you're trying to sell Stanford to recruits on the recruiting trail, I mean, you just got to show them Sunken Diamond in a super regional and say, why wouldn't you want to come here on top of the education and all that Stanford has to offer? And then not only are they playing the super regionals, but they're actually winning them and going to Omaha. So, for Stanford, this is just great from a recruiting perspective, just being able to sell this on the recruiting trail and say, hey, you come to Stanford, you're going to get one of the top best educations in the world. And on top of that, you're going to get a chance to go to Omaha. What's not to like? So, lots to like it for Stanford and having this kind of run. It kind of builds upon itself, and they are becoming a consistent presence now in the College World Series, and that is huge for their program. And it's huge for Stanford athletics as a whole because as a result of that, they won the Directors Cup. So I mean, just a lot of good things for Stanford across the board. With the baseball team winning. And then, football players were there. Football recruits have been checking out the games as well. So they had official visits. So just in general, having an electric atmosphere at Sunken Diamond is a great thing for all Stanford athletics, not just the baseball team. And then finally, just I did mention football recruiting. Stanford football has just been absolutely crushing it on the recruiting trail. Almost a top 10 recruiting class now, according to Rivals' rankings. Just been landing a bunch of guys. Go to cardinalsportsreport.com for all the information on that. There's just so many guys they've been landing. I don't want to miss. I don't want to forget any names off the top of my head. I've been just spending so much time on Huddle, just looking up tape of all these guys. And the really scary thing is they're not even yet done with this class. There's other really top targets that they're looking at who they very well might add into the fold. And I provided more information on that on the cardinalsportsreport.com message board. So definitely check that out because a lot of good recruiting information is pouring in right now. So just in general, a lot of good stuff happening for Stanford. Baseball team back in Omaha for third straight year. Football team going nuts recruiting wise. Lots to get excited about if you're a Stanford fan. And so that's it for me in the podcast. If you want to check out my work, just head to cardinalsportsreport.com. And if you want to follow me on social media, The handle is slamdunk406 on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you want to connect with CardinalSportsReport.com directly on Facebook and Twitter, I have a page. I have pages set up for that as well. The handle for that is Stanford Rivals. I will add that information in the description below. And if you like this content, feel free to subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Really appreciate that. And until next time, you guys all have a good weekend and enjoy the College World Series. Should be fun. Have a good one.